Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Woman podcast. Today, I'll be talking about something very personal to me, something that I have been dealing with for the past year, and it's something that might be considered embarrassing to some people. Some people rather keep it locked away, wrapped up, don't want to talk about it. In my case, talking about it is likely to help, even if it's just one person. So here is my story after I had my baby. If you watched the previous episode, I talked about the health struggles I had when I had my son, who actually just turned 1, like 2 days ago. I'm about to cry. But yeah, he's a year old. And this episode is pretty much what happened after the medical stuff I went through with him. The previous episode deals with the medical stuff I went through, so you can check that out. Now, fast forward, right? Baby's here and I'm out of the hospital because in last episode I got admitted to the hospital. Okay, I got admitted, brought out all the bells and whistles. My husband and the baby got to be admitted to the hospital with me, and I was able to pump milk. I got a breast pump right away. The husband and baby were there with me. I was able to, get like an MRI and all this stuff after the seizure, after the eclampsia and all of that. So I am gonna do an episode later on just in more detail about eclampsia, because it's something that I didn't know much about eclampsia, and it is a silent killer is what they call it, especially in women of color. It is very, very prominent with us, so things to watch out for and stuff like that. I'll do an episode with a women's health expert on that. So once I came home with the baby, this is after, I've been home with the baby like twice or 3 times at this point, but this is, okay, finally now, you're home with the baby. Then began the brain disease is what I'm going to call it, because how you have high blood pressure, it's a cardiac disease. I feel like when you have issues like depression, anxiety, it's a brain disease. If people look at it like that, I feel like it will be better treated versus trying to ignore it, trying to pray it away. Prayer is good, but I'm saying trying to pray it away as in you realize you need more help and you do not seek that help, whether it's for religious or cultural differences. In my case, prayer helped me a lot in addition to other things. So this is home with the baby. Started having episodes of not being able to sleep. I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep. I'll stay up. I was up for like days. I would take a little snooze, but then I just get like real anxious. I wake up, my heart's racing, so it was hard for me to sleep. So sleep deprivation is actually something they use in the military to, punish or to get people to snitch or whatever. So sleep deprivation is a real thing. It makes you literally lose your mind. So I was not able to get sleep. I started having my heart was racing, started having palpitations, and I'm just like, okay, this is not good. Once the baby, so we try to room the baby in the room with us. Once the baby would sleep, I kept thinking like, oh my gosh, is he breathing? Moms do that, new moms do that. We like, oh my gosh, is my baby alive? I started having those issues, like thinking like, is the baby okay? The baby was fine, but started having that. I was obsessing over SIDS is what I kept obsessing over. And I'm like, SIDS, like sudden infant death syndrome, so the baby's gonna die. I started thinking like, I'll hold the baby, I'm standing by the window, and I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna shoot me through the window. I don't live somewhere where it's likely that that would happen. Like, I don't live, in an unsafe neighborhood or anything, but I'm like, or what if a plane falls on the house? What if my husband leaves the house and I'm just like, oh, what if he doesn't come back and now I'm a widow? My son's going to school. Or what if there's a school shooting? It was just everything. Like, I just kept spiraling. At first, I kept it to myself because I'm like, okay, what the heck's going on? Then I had this look like this. And everyone's like, are you okay? Do you need to sleep? It was just this panicked look that I had. I'm holding the baby. I'm like trying to breastfeed the baby. I'm feeling like nervous and shaky to the point where I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. So the little anxious, they call it ruminating thoughts, or intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts is like, worst case, you're just thinking, what if? Intrusive thoughts is what they call it in psychology. Yeah, psychology. Started having these intrusive thoughts, then it started escalating into full-blown panic attacks. As in, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. This is how it felt to me. Felt like the walls were closing in. Felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to pace, just pacing the house. The baby, I'm a new mom. I have a baby that I have to breastfeed. At the time, I felt like I had to breastfeed. 2 days in, called the doctor again. The doctor was like, well, we had called in Xanax for you. Previous episode, if y'all remember, I was feeling, I thought it was baby blues, and they had called in Xanax for me. And I'm like, Xanax? Like popping pills Xanax? I don't do that. Yeah, And so we went to see the doctor because, again, he was like, okay, post follow-up. We went there. I'm talking to him. He's like, well, remember, I think the other doctor had said something about you starting an antidepressant. I was like, what? An antidepressant? So we're at the OBGYN's office and he is talking to me. I'm just sitting there in a daze, in shock, panicky. He goes, I think you should try the antidepressant. And I look over to, my husband's name's Tim, so I'll refer to Tim, right? Tim's gonna come up a lot. I look over to Tim, he's holding the baby, and I just start bawling, crying. I'm like, I'm going crazy, I've gone crazy. And the doctor's like, you're not crazy, just try the antidepressant and see how it makes you feel. So I'm looking over at him because I'm like, ooh, this is not what this man signed up for, a crazy lady. He looks over at me and he's like, it's okay, you'll be fine. This is Tim trying to let me know I'll be fine, right? And I'm just like, man, he's just saying that in my mind. Also, I'm not thinking straight, right? Because I'm just in panic, fight or flight mode at this point. So we leave. He goes, babe, I think you should try the antidepressant. I'm like, what? He's like, I think you should try it. And I'm like, but if I try it, then I'm going to be on crazy medicine, And I asked the OBGYN this. I was like, but how long do I have to take it? He's like, okay, how about you take it for a year? We follow up at your 1-year checkup. I'm like, a year? But he goes, but even if you have to take it for your whole life, so what? I'm like, so what? I'm not crazy. I'm going to take, it was Zoloft. I'm like, I'm going to take Zoloft? That's what they give to people. In my mind, right? I'm a healthcare provider. I'm a nurse with a master's degree in nursing. And I'm saying Zoloft is for crazy people because stigma, because not thinking straight. I'm like, no, because psych meds are just, it's like, oh, blood pressure med, that's fine. Psych med, oh, heck no. Zoloft, Seroquel, like all that stuff is for people who've lost it. Whether it's just conversations I've heard, growing up or just being around people or things people will say, like, oh, that one, they have to be on this medicine, or like, oh, that person, they have to take this to keep up. Man, they're not strong enough. They're not mentally strong enough. So I'm just like, God, not me, please, God. But the way I was feeling, I'm like, I feel like I want to escape my body. Like I was scared. I was scared. Because I've never felt this way before. My mind was foggy. I would just have waves of doom, is what I call it. You know how like black tar. I felt like my soul was being sucked into black tar. In Harry Potter, what's her name? J.K. Rowling. She said what are these things called? I'm gonna put it on the screen. But yeah, she said when she went through depression, that's what those that were called. That was her. It explained how depression made her feel. That it's like a darkness that you can't explain, but you want to escape the darkness, because it went from racing thoughts, panic attacks, to feelings of gloom, feelings of like despair, like heavy despair. It's like internal, but you feel it physically. And people around you are living life, like going around, people in the house holding the baby. It seems like a happy moment to everybody. I just feel like I'm just sitting there, like just afraid, I had this look, like I said, I had this look of just dread, because I didn't feel right, and I wanted to escape that feeling, because that's not something you want to feel for a long time, right? So then I'm thinking like, okay, what can I do, right? What can I do? So I started going down the Reddit hole, because the Reddit hole. I go on Google, start going down, going on Reddit. People are like, well, I'm on Xanax. I take anxiety medicine. Like, I've been on Xanax for so long. Xanax is addictive. You can't get off of Xanax. And I'm just like, oh, no. I don't want to be now I'm about to be a druggie. Again, in my head, I'm about to be a druggie, and I'm already going crazy. So I kept telling myself I was going crazy. And now I'm about to be on Xanax, and I'm going to have to be on this medication for how long? Who knows? So then on Reddit, right, people are like, okay, yeah, the Xanax helps me. It was differing views. It was differing opinions, right? But that Reddit hole, it could take you down the wrong path. Either way. I was like, okay, I need God, I need help. So I started just going in the room. I'll just escape everybody, go lay on the floor, just crying, just praying to God, please help me. Like, I don't know what this is. I've never felt this before. Please help me. Where are you, God, is what I kept saying. Because God has shown up for me so many times in my life that I'm like, there's no other choice. Like, literally, he's my go-to guy. Like, there's no, like, I don't believe in God over here. Nope. He has shown up for me. And this time I'm like, are you there? Because I'm not hearing you. Like, he was there, but I wasn't hearing him, because I was in a dark place and I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, is what they say. That's how it feels like going through depression specifically. That's how it feels like. So in my case, this was a darkness that I couldn't explain, a darkness that I didn't seem to be able to escape, right? So then I started doing research again. Some of the going down rabbit holes are not always a bad thing, because same J.K. Rowling, I like her anyway. Somebody had asked her on Twitter, was like, what would you say to somebody who's going through something? So for example, like, if I'm going through heartbreak, how can you help me? Or if I'm going through something bad, how can you help me? He was like, always look for somebody who's overcome it. So somebody who's gone through it and being like, okay, I made it through. Which is why I'm telling this story, because even if it's just one woman going through postpartum depression, there's so many segments of it. Postpartum anxiety, postpartum insomnia, postpartum psychosis. It actually can get pretty dark, to the point where women can hurt themselves, or like do something permanent that you can't come back from. And we'll get to that in a bit. So there was this book that I started reading. It's like a postpartum support group, like book. It was a book of a lady who put together stories from different moms who had been through postpartum issues. So there were women who were dealing with postpartum insomnia, which is where you cannot sleep. So things I dealt with were postpartum insomnia, because I couldn't sleep, postpartum anxiety, because I was anxious, racing thoughts, heart racing, panic attacks. My because I don't claim it. I went through it, but I don't claim it. The anxiety made the insomnia worse because I felt so anxious that I couldn't sleep. Every time I lay down, my heart's racing. I just had to sit back up. And then because I couldn't sleep, because I was so anxious, I couldn't sleep. And because I couldn't sleep, it made me more anxious. So it's just like this, right? I'm like, something's got to give. So how about, here I go. I'm like, I'm going to take this Xanax. Let me see, right? I'm like, I'll just take it one time. I'll never take it again. Because my husband, Tim, because Tim picked up the medication and was like, okay, I picked it up. He picked up the Xanax and he picked up Zoloft. Crazy medicine for this lady here. That's what I called it, right? Crazy medicine. And then I was like, let me take one of the Xanax and just see how it feels. I took a Xanax. I was like, what? Wow, okay. It was just like, things just were like settling. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm not even able to talk about the baby right now because, to be honest with you, for maybe the first month, I don't remember. The first month of my baby's life was kind of foggy. The first few months, not just the first month. I was there, but I barely remember. Thank God for support between my mom, my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law literally moved in because she works from home. She literally moved in she was with us for like a few months. And when she was trying to leave, man, I was like, don't go. I did not want her to leave. You know how people get like, oh my gosh, somebody. No, I was like, please don't go. But she literally moved in. So between her, Tim, my mom, because my mom did work. My mom works as a nurse, so she goes into work. So my mom will come in, provide some relief, cook, and all of that. I was just existing in this fog. Like, I thank God. Like, I'm all over the place with this, but just tidbits as we go. If you can find few solid people, that's better than having like a crowd of people who are not gonna be there for you, like be there and like cover you, not just be there like, oh, did you hear she went crazy after she had the baby? Like, did you hear? Not that type of crew. I'm talking about a crew who's just there to like keep you in your lowest of lows. They're there to like hold you up. Like, that's so important. Back to the Xanax. So when I took that Xanax, I felt, for the first time in a while, I felt some calmness. I ate. I hadn't been eating. That's the other thing. I hadn't been able to eat. I was losing so much weight because I couldn't even eat. Like, my mind would, I couldn't eat. I just couldn't. Put the food in front of me. I can't eat it. I'm having panic. Like, I'm sitting here barely able to breathe. Like, I'm not thinking food. I was so weak. I was so depleted. I would hold the baby and I'm just looking at him and it was just a fog. So when I took that Xanax, it just made me like this and I went to sleep for the first time in like weeks. I went to sleep and I woke up and the Hannah that I was, Tim, mother-in-law, mom, they saw that and they were like, whoa, what happened? And then I told them, I took the Xanax. Tim knew because Tim was there giving it, I said, you got to stay here with me while I take the first dose. So this is me taking the first dose of the Xanax. Crying and taking the medicine. I'm laughing now, but I was literally bawling. When I would have the panic attacks, I would go look for him. Like, he's working upstairs and I'll look for him. I'll just get him. I'll go and I'll be like, come. And he'll go just hold my hand and I'll just cry. So after he saw what happened, when it will come on, like, he'll try to sit with me, breathe through. I'm like, I'm crazy. Like, he's just like, you're not crazy. I'm like, I'm crazy. You're not crazy. And then, just try to zen me. But I could see in his eyes that he was scared too, because this is not who he knows or who he marries. This is not who I know. Or I didn't even know I could get to this point. So he's talking me off the ledge. So he's like, okay, I'm going to give you, so I was like, you got to manage it. Because, then he's like, do you want to take the Xanax? I'm like, I don't want to take that. I don't want to take it. So he'll be like, okay, here's the thing. Because it was prescribed for every 8 hours, right? So I'll take it one day. I'll feel good. Like, by day 2, I guess it's wearing off, start feeling anxious again and panicky. So he would be like, do you want to take the Xanax? I'm like, no, I don't want to take it. So then he's like, okay, here's the thing. I'm like, how about you give it to me? So he'll be like, okay, I'll manage it. So if I need it, if he sees it coming on, right? So I go from that to the only thing that helps me is this Xanax that I'm so anti-Xanax, right? So first thing, medication helped. And I'm going to make a list of things that helped me at the end of this, because thank God I'm here, right? Able to tell the story now. So I started realizing I needed the Xanax like every few days. So doing some more research, I'm like, well, I don't want to need this because, I have it, it wears off. And it just kind of keeps my symptoms under bay for like a bit. And this is not my goal to be on this, right? So what are my choices? I still haven't taken the Zoloft. So Tim's like, are you going to take the Zoloft? Like, how about you take the Zoloft, right? And I'm like, I'm not taking Zoloft. Again, I'm not. I decide again, okay, I'm going to take the Zoloft. Did some research. Zoloft, it's an SSRI. It takes selective substance, reuptake, whatever, inhibitor thingy. Long story short, it takes your body a while to develop enough levels of the serotonin, which is what the Zoloft is made out of, which helps with your mood and stuff. It's like it's chemical stuff. It's chemical imbalance stuff in the brain. So it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for it to get to a therapeutic level for you to see it working. I'm like, okay, I'm like a week in with this stuff. This crazy stuff. That's what I'm calling it. This crazy stuff. I'm like a week in with it. I don't have 6 weeks I don't have that. He's like, okay, but if you don't have 6 weeks, you're gonna be around for 6 weeks, aren't you? So if you're gonna be around, why not take it and just see? And okay, so finally I like, okay, I'll try it. I took a dose while crying, because I was put on blood pressure medicine because of the eclampsia. So I'm put on blood pressure medicine, I'm put on aspirin to prevent any, side effects or any complications from the eclampsia. So I'm on a baby aspirin, I'm on blood pressure medicine. Oh, I have no problem taking those. Pop, take it. Zoloft container, time to take Zoloft. I'm crying while cracking it open. I'm crying while putting it in. I'm crying. I was like, Hannah, back to the drawing board. So here I go. I think I told y'all before. Here I go. I'm crying, praying to God. God, please help me. So I'm like, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to take, no. Actually, I skipped way forward, right? So here I go. I'm like, I need help with this. I reach out to a therapist online. I'm like, I need somebody, I need help. I need somebody to help me with this. So I reach out to a therapist. I have an appointment with a therapist. I meet with her. I'm looking disheveled. I look disheveled. I look a mess. I was in my bed. I had a video appointment with her. She was middle-aged lady, and I was telling her that I was prescribed an antidepressant, and that's what I started bawling, blah blah blah. And she goes, you don't have to take medication, you don't have to take medicine. That, like, people are so quick to put people on medicine. You'll be fine, you'll get through this. And I pretty much left the session feeling like, it's a me problem. It's a me problem. It's not, it's me. Something's wrong with me. Because also she said, I don't need medicine. Here I am trying to just I was like, oh, wait, I want her to tell me that, yeah, take the medicine. That's what I wanted. But she was like, no, you don't need to take medicine. So I left that appointment. I was feeling worse. Let me say it that way. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try somebody else. Because besides her just saying don't take medicine, because I was already taking the Xanax. I didn't tell her that though. I was like, they prescribed me Xanax and Zoloft. At this point, actually, I hadn't told anybody that I was taking the Xanax yet. Tim was the only one who knew, because stigma, I didn't want anybody to know I was taking Xanax. So I was like, don't tell anybody, about the Xanax. Eventually, I did end up telling my mom and my mother-in-law, but initially, I didn't tell anybody. So the therapist, again, like, what the, I don't know why. I didn't want to tell her I was taking Xanax. So I did it, and she was like, oh, don't take medicine. You don't have to do that. You can get through this. We're women. We can get through this. Okay, tough love. Kind of what I was expecting to get from, like, if a family member who might not be aware of mental health issues, but I wasn't expecting that from a mental health professional. So I didn't go back. I left the session feeling worse, the first and last session. So then I'm like, okay, let me go online and try somebody else, because so I tried another lady. I don't think the age matters, but anyway, she might be like my age. And at the session, I started off saying like, I had a baby, blah, 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 blah. She just let me talk. I talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And then I'm like, I'm so sorry. Each time I'm like, I'm sorry. And I start crying. I was like, but pretty much I'm coming to you because I'm crazy. And she was like, oh, you're crazy? What makes you think you're crazy? And I'm like, cause my mind's not right. I don't feel right. I'm not thinking right. She's like, are you hearing voices? And I was like, no, I'm not hearing voices. Are you seeing things that aren't there? I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, well, you're not crazy. She's like, and there are people who even see and hear things. That doesn't necessarily mean they're crazy. So like, as far as I'm concerned, you're not crazy. She's like, so do you think you're crazy? I'm like, well, based on what you said, I guess I'm not crazy. Yeah, I don't mean to laugh, but and then I mentioned to her that I had like medication that I didn't know if I wanted to take. I really was concerned about the antidepressant because I've been taking the Xanax now, just between me and Tim. So I'm like, well, I don't want to take the Xanax long term, right? So I'm like, okay, I was prescribed an antidepressant by my OBGYN, and I don't know why they would do something like that, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, so what is it with the antidepressant? Like, why do you not want to take it? I explained to her. I'm like, because it's just, again, I said, well, you did say I'm not crazy, but I think of it like crazy medication. She's like, well, I have a lot of patients who take antidepressants and they're not crazy. They function, they go to work. I'm like, really? They go to work and then on antidepressants. This like, in hindsight, now that my mind is clear, I can't believe where I was mentally, or how naive I was at the time. But I guess when you know better, you do better. I didn't know, even where I was, I didn't know like that this whole world of mental illness existed and people were functioning in it, like it wasn't like a death sentence. But for me, that's how I felt. So, and I confessed to her, and I hadn't told Tim this or anybody at the time, that I was feeling like a burden to everybody, like my mom, my mother-in-law, Tim, my teenager. I'm like, I feel like a burden to them. And he was like, you keep saying this like you feel like a burden. Like, what makes you feel like a burden? She's like, if they needed you or were going through something, will you be there for them? I'm like, of course. So she's like, so what makes you think you don't deserve the same? Like, do you think they love you? I'm like, of course. And she's like, so why would you feel like a burden? I'm like, because I care for these people. I love them so much. I don't want to put anything extra on their plate. So he's like, well, here's the thing. I want you to ask them if you're a burden to them. Because have they said that? I'm like, no. So good. She's like, a mature human or mature individual will let you know, like, nah, this is too much for me. Or somebody, So she's like, so ask them if you're a burden to them. She's like, I don't think you are, but you could like ask them because you keep saying that you're a burden. So we went from that to like, I was like, ooh, I can't wait for our next session in my head. I didn't look like that to her. I was just like, she's like, I look forward to seeing you next session. In my mind, I'm like, And she goes like, why? What? I'm like, because I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if I can feel this way any longer. Like, I don't want to be like this, my kids to be like, oh, their mom is like, things ain't right up there. And I was like, and honest to you, I've had thoughts of, what if I wasn't around? No action plan, but I've had thoughts of like, what if I wasn't around and I could just get rid of this feeling I'm feeling and get rid of being a burden to people, just take myself out of the equation. So, If you know what that is, you know what those are called. So those are called, thoughts of suicide. So, and I don't know if it's like censored. That's why I'm hesitant to say it. Not because I don't want to talk about it, because sometimes they censor those words. But those thoughts were crossing my mind. Like, what if I wasn't around? And that's how dark it got. Like, now I'm saying it sounds so like so far gone, but like that's how dark it got. That's how dark it can get for some people so fast, because things just are not feeling. You're trying to escape this feeling of sadness, this feeling of dread, this feeling of doom, this feeling of like there's nothing better coming. And she said something that I left that session like, oh, children who lose their parents to suicide are likely to also commit suicide. So when she said that, I'm like, oh, the mom in me, the mom that was like, I don't want to be a burden. Well, that same mom is like, I don't ever want to be the reason my children feel like they cannot go on. Because it's such a heavy subject, because people, their parents who do commit suicide. So it's a heavy subject without being judgmental. But if at any point anybody's ever feeling like I have nothing to live for, like I'm doing this to take away the pain of my family, or take away being a burden to my family, like the hurt is gonna be worse you doing something not to be there for your kids than whatever burden you could ever be, ever. Instead of saying like, oh, even if you don't want to be a burden, rather maybe just be like, I'm just gonna move away. I mean, that sounds extreme, but I'm saying like that pain of being the reason why your children are not around because of what you did to yourself, that is not a pain that I would ever want to feel. So I left that session saying, because I don't want to feel this way anymore, and I know I'm not feeling any better, I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to stop feeling this way, or to feel better, or to be able to tolerate whatever I'm feeling enough, including having to go on this antidepressant. And that is how I took my first pill of Zoloft, while crying boo-hoo and praying. I was crying and praying like, dear God, please. Because people say, oh, antidepressants change your mind, they change your this, it does. And I'll tell you how it did me. But people say, oh, those medications change you. They do. In my case, so I took it, right? Crying just every day, just taking it, just crying, just taking it, crying. My daily dose with my blood pressure medicine and my aspirin, taking it and crying. And then it was foggy. Like I felt foggy, like they say, well, oh, it alters you. Like for a few days, it was like, I felt like I was in a fog, like behind a fog, and the world was outside the fog. That's how I felt on the medication, on the Zoloft. I felt like I was watching the world happen around me. I was there, but like the world was happening. Like life was just happening, and I was just like an observer. Until the fog started clearing, right? There was a fog now. The fog started clearing, and my mind started settling, because my mind was spiraling. My mind was just spiraling, With postpartum stuff, it's hormonal, right? It's hormonal as in your hormones drop. Some people, the adjustment and whatever, it can be hormonal. There are situations in life or people who it's not hormonal. It's life. Like life happens, or you've been like putting on this, what people want you to be, and not being your authentic self, that you don't even know who your authentic self is. There's so many reasons. There's so many causes of whether it's anxiety, depression. Some people can't even pinpoint what the reason is. Whatever your reason is, my thing was like, I just need to feel better. I don't want to feel this way. And the other extreme choice I was thinking of was like not being around, which is wild right now, which is wild, because like the ways God has the blessings I had, I couldn't even see it, like I couldn't see it at that time. And people might not see it, like whatever you have around you and the blessings that are to come, like you don't see it when you're going through this. You don't see anything past where you're at that time. So it was a day at a time. So like the fog started clearing, my mind settled down. I felt numb because it was hard for me to cry when things were, I was just like in this state of not drugged up. Like I was very clear. I was clear as in I could think clearly. Like I didn't see I'm this person who's very like, ever since I was little, I don't know, I'll say I'm a performer is what I say, because I give people what I think they want to see. Whatever part of me people want to see, I give that, because I'm like, oh, if people are like, man, Hannah, if I'm quiet, everybody's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you quiet? Because I'm just like this, the life of the party, like, oh my gosh, hey, oh my gosh, hey, oh my gosh. Then I'll just get home and crash. Like I guess selective, I'm extroverted, introvert, whatever they call it. There's a term, extroverted, introvert. I was a people pleaser. That's how I describe myself. Because some of us are raised to not rock the boat, and our parents, like I love my mom, I love my dad, our parents love us, but things you pick up in childhood, things you pick up along the way, things you think you need to do or ways you think you need to behave to survive. Just like I have to just be the, like growing up, I was the kid who everybody was like, oh man, she's so sweet, she's so friendly, so I got recognition from that I thrived off of it. It was like, oh man, Hannah. So my go-to was, oh, Hannah's the life of the party, Hannah's this, to the point when my therapist asked me, I was like, yeah, because I don't want people are gonna be like, what's wrong with her? Like, like I'm used to being happy all the time. She was like, that's not realistic. Is that realistic? Is anybody happy all the time? No, nobody's happy all the time. Like, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, and people always be like, man, Hannah, I've never seen you upset. Do you get upset? Man, I've never seen you upset. Whether it was in friendships, in relationships, I'll just give and just be like, oh, whatever they want. People cross you and you just let it go, because for the sake of, I've been knowing them for 500 years. Like it was just people pleasing. When I went on this medication, like, I'm not kidding you, I was able to like say, like, if somebody did something, I'll be like, oh, I don't like that. Like, don't do that. And I didn't feel guilty. Before I would. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the hormones did. I don't know what the serotonin did, but it just gave me this sense of calm. It just settled my mind. It just made me feel at peace. I didn't feel, it worked. Let me say that. It worked for me, okay? I'm currently off of it because I was able to wean myself off after a few months of just feeling better and just working on myself. But other things that helped me, and I'm going to go over what helped me to deal with, and I think will help you too, okay? Because I'm going to go over this stuff and go from there. I started praying. Just pray. I'll just lay on the floor and pray. I'll just pray. I'll just lay on the floor because I didn't have the energy to do anything else. I'll just lay there crying, praying to God, asking God to help me. Number one is prayer for me. Asking God, because all this stuff I started exploring later, I'll just lay there and like, I'll feel God like talking to me like that is this. At first, I couldn't hear. I'm not kidding you. I couldn't hear. I wasn't clear enough to hear the voice of God. And when I'm saying hear the voice of God, this is not like trying to be like, oh my gosh, she hears God talk to her. If you listen, God talks to you. God will talk to you in thoughts he puts in your mind. He'll talk to you in situations. He'll talk to you in your mood. Like you want to go somewhere and someone's like, just don't go. Like, I just don't feel like it. That could be God talking to you. God doesn't come be like, hey, what's up? Don't go there. This ain't the place I want you to be. No, it's going to be like your thoughts. It's going to be a feeling you have, like an unnerving or like excitement with something. You're just like, oh, this person, this environment brings me joy, That's how God nudges us. He nudges us with those type of things, with our thoughts. I joined Postpartum International. It's postpartum support groups. I had all the time in the world. Thank God I had all the support. So I was able to go to support groups every day online. It was moms going through postpartum, from babies a few weeks to moms with their kids a year old, just going through stuff. We're just talking about stuff, just crying, just a safe space. And it made me feel less alone. It made me feel like, oh wow, because I didn't know anybody who had gone through something as heavy as this just from having a baby. Because I kept saying, I said, I just wanted a baby. Like I didn't sign up for all this. I literally was like, I wanted a baby, and now I done gone crazy. That's what I kept saying in my mind. I'm like, I just wanted a baby. I didn't want all of this. And then the postpartum support groups made me feel less alone. I looked forward to those. I started going for walks. I'll put the baby in the stroller and I'll kept going for walks. Sometimes I'll just go by myself. I started sitting out. I'll just sit out under the sun. I'll just sit there. Again, I don't have anything else to do besides crying and panicking. So I'll go sit out in the sun. Vitamin D helps. I started, as the brain fog cleared, I started being able to pray more and I'll just put on praise and worship songs, Maverick City helped me, Bethel music. I put African praise and worship songs, and I'll just lay there, just cry and just listen to praise and worship songs. The medication, like I said, ended up helping me. I eventually was able to stop needing the Xanax. Like once the Zoloft kicked in, I didn't need Xanax anymore. Initially, I needed the Xanax to go to sleep because I would just be so panicky. I would take Xanax and I'll be able to go to sleep. I eventually started weaning off of the Xanax. I started taking Unisom. It's like a Benadryl, it's like a sleep aid. That one's over the counter. Gradually, and I noticed I started sleeping. My mother-in-law started keeping the baby at night because for some reason when the baby, I'll hear him just whimper like, I'll just wake up. I'm like, oh my gosh, start freaking out. So I literally had to sleep in a separate room from the baby. Like I had to sleep. The baby couldn't even be on the same floor with me. And this sounds, because you had a baby, it's kind of like, dang girl, it's not that serious. Oh, it is. It is that serious, and it gets that serious. And as women or Black women, we feel like we have to do it all, because in my mind, I'm like, why am I not the one taking care of my baby? Where's somebody else taking care of the baby? Like, what type of bougie statement is this? I can't sleep with the baby in the same floor. Like if I hear the baby's noise. But when I tell you, my mom and mother-in-law were so understanding of it. Like my mother-in-law did not make me feel like, oh, who you think you are. She'll just be like, oh, I'll take the baby tonight, and she'll sleep upstairs with the baby. My husband, I could see, because we were both sleep deprived, and he was trying to hold on to be strong for me. And once I started coming around, I could see him clearly, because he was there, but I was just using him like a crutch. I could see him everybody noticed, like, our parents noticed, like, just, okay, things are settling down. Because the whole house was just on edge, because we haven't been through this. I hadn't been through this. I had a child before. I have a teenager. I have my teenager, and I didn't go through something like this. I had like blues, postpartum blues is what they call it. It was like a few days of weeping. This was a full-blown, like, I'm out. So crying helped, like for real, just crying and letting it out. It helped me. Getting enough sleep helped. Enough nutrition. Again, I couldn't eat much, so I was just drinking Ensures. I was just chugging Ensures because I thought I needed the nutrients. I had no appetite, so we got like batches of Ensure in the fridge, chilled. I like the vanilla flavor. I'll just open it up and just chug an Ensure in the morning, afternoon, night, just to get something in me. I actually stopped breastfeeding because that was the other thing. I stopped for a while. I restarted thank God, when I started feeling better and I learned you can breastfeed on Zoloft, because that's the other thing. I was like, I don't know if I could breastfeed the baby on Zoloft. But the guilt I felt, because I was like, my baby's going to be exclusively breastfed because, hey, superwoman, right? No guilt there. Because my mother-in-law was in-house, and I'll keep referring to her. And she was like, if you can't do it, we'll just give him formula. You know, like he'll be fine. And I felt so much guilt, but like the baby started doing formula. I was able to sleep longer hours because I didn't have to breastfeed like every 2 hours like I had been doing, right? And then I started going to therapy like twice a week. I got kicked out of therapy. That's what I say. I didn't get kicked out. But the therapist was like, you think we could go down to once a week, like toward like after months of that? And I was like, no. And she kept saying like, I think, and she was seeing a change that I wasn't even seeing, because I think the first time I was going, I was looking like a mad woman. I went and got my hair done. She started giving me projects, was like, okay, I need you, like this weekend, what are you going to do? Are you going to go out with your husband? And I'm like, I can't do that. We went out to a restaurant one time and I had a full-blown panic attack. We had to leave. We had ordered the food. They were going to bring the food. I just started freaking out. Like, I thought I was in the hospital after the seizure. I thought I had a seizure. I was in the hospital. I'm looking at all these people in the restaurant. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I at the hospital? Again, just full-blown panic attack, not thinking straight. We had to come home. We brought the food home. He was very, Tim was very patient. Thank God for him. Thank God for, good people in your life. Therapy helped me a lot. And with therapy, I delved into things that didn't even have to do with my current issue with the postpartum depression stuff. Like, I found out I had high functioning anxiety, which is even pre the postpartum anxiety stuff. So I had like issues that I had just been carrying over with me, just building up. I mean, I was married for 10 years and went through a divorce. That's traumatizing. I never really went to official therapy with that. I talked to people here and there, but like I never even dealt with the trauma from that. So it gave me an opportunity to just process a lot of things. She started asking me about my childhood. I'm like, what that got to do with postpartum? But it was helpful. It was helpful. Now I'm like, I want a therapist just on like weekly, or even once a month, that's just like maintenance. You know how you go for like your yearly physical. Yeah, like having a monthly therapy session is very, very helpful, very helpful, because we don't even know some of the stuff we're carrying along. Ugh. It was one of the best things. Like now in hindsight, your darkest times, and again, you hear this until you're in your darkest times and you're like, please, that ain't true. But your darkest times bring out like somebody you didn't even know existed, like in a great way. So, sometimes just doing nothing. Like sometimes I was just lay there. Like sometimes just doing nothing, just being able to do nothing. Again, I talked about finding stories of people who have been there, gone through it. The postpartum book I read, I'll put it up, and just women who went through postpartum and their stories. There was a pastor who was having anxiety and panic attacks. I read his book on Kindle, and I'll put the book up as well. That was very helpful too. And because like a man of God, he went through this, he had to go into deep intensive therapy and like rehabilitation and stuff like that. Having a support system, somebody just supporting, not judging you. They're just there supporting you. That's very crucial. Like when you go through life-changing stuff like that. And even you or us as people, if somebody's going through something, just be there. Sometimes people just need somebody to be there. Like they say, like if somebody is like going through something or something heavy, like if I'm going through like a hard time, I already know I'm going through a hard time. Like I know what I know. I just sometimes just need somebody there, non-judgmental. Your support system, let them help with the baby. There's going to be guilt, but the good thing is they're a baby. They won't remember, and even if they did, you have to take care of you to be able to be there. So, eat or take some form of nutrition, get help with the baby. There was this one of these groups I was in where one of the moms said when she was dealing with postpartum depression, anxiety, and panic and stuff, her husband had told her to write. Her husband had written on a piece of paper and was like, you have a husband who loves you and you have 2 boys who love you very much. And that was her reminder, like, I have people who love me. Tim was my cousin who lives in England had texted Tim to check on me when I was going through this, right? And he was like, oh, thank you for taking care of my sister, blah, blah, blah. Tim's reply was like, of course, I love her. I kid you not, because he's told me like, oh, you're not a burden. We love, you're not this. But I kid you not, when I read that message that he said, like, of course, duh, I love her. This is my wife. Like, this is the person I love. Of course, I'm going to take care of her. Like, you don't need to thank me for that. That text that I saw is what made me realize, oh, he's right, I'm not a burden. Because even when he told me I wasn't a burden, for some reason, I was like, nah, he's just saying that. I saw that text where he told my cousin, like, of course, like, that's my wife. Like, of course I love her. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, obviously I'm married to the man. I'm expecting he should love me. But anyway, that's a whole other story, because you could be married to somebody who doesn't love you. Okay. But anyway, back to what I'm saying. When I saw that text where he said, of course, she's not, like, of course I'm going to take care of her. I love her. I was like, dang, he does love me. And then that just made me feel okay to not be okay. Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. And hope. That's a very important thing, because I feel like people don't have hope. When somebody is going through something like that, what's missing is hope. Because you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So when people are going through stuff like that, there's no hope. People don't feel hope. Like, ask God for hope. Like, there is hope. You just feel like, dang, there's nothing, like, it's not going to get better. But it is. It's going to get better. If you're going through depression, anxiety, panic attacks, even psychosis, like, it can get better. It will get better. I can assure in hindsight. Now I'm sitting here, like, I just look at my baby and I start crying, because for whatever reason, whether it was because my mind wasn't right, whether it was hormonal, whatever the reason was, I was like, I could have not been here, just making a split-second decision because I felt things were heavy at that time, or I felt like, well, it's not going to get better. But how do you know it's not going to get better? Like, how do you know it's not going to get better? It's time. So give it time. And even if it's painful, give it time. Even if you feel like the walls are closing in, give it time. Seek as much help as you can get. As of right now, I was able to wean off of the Zoloft. I was able to, when I was weaning off, I didn't tell anybody, not even Tim, not even my husband. I didn't tell him that I was going to try to get off of the Zoloft, because I had stopped taking the blood pressure medicine because, my blood pressure was controlled for a while. I didn't need to take the aspirin anymore. So the only thing I was still on was Zoloft, the antidepressant. I didn't need something to sleep, because with the Zoloft, that's the only thing I was on. But like I said, my mind was so much clearer that I was like, I think I can do this. So I prayed about it and I started, because you don't want to stop taking it all of a sudden. Honestly, you should take it under the supervision of a physician. And what that would be is because you have to taper it slowly. You don't want to stop it suddenly. So I was on 50 milligrams of the Zoloft, and I broke it off into like 1.5. So I went down from 50 milligrams. I did 37.5 for like 1 or 2 weeks. Then I did half a pill, 25, for like 1 or 2 weeks. Then I did quarter of a pill, 12.5, for like 1 or 2 weeks. And then I stopped it. So I was able to get off of the Zoloft. As of right now, I'm not on any medication or any psych medicine. But if I need it, I'm taking it. Like, now, knowing what I know now, if I need to take medicine for brain health. Because when you say brain health, it sounds a lot like, oh, okay, brain disease or whatever. Because when they say brain disease, people think like, oh, they got a tumor or a stroke or whatever. That's those mental health, that's brain disease too. Like, you know, you have a brain illness, that's a brain illness. So sitting where I'm sitting right now, if I need to take an antidepressant, I am 100% taking it. If I get to a point in life where things are heavy and I feel like I can't carry the burden alone and I need additional support medication wise, I'm going for it. Do you understand? If I'm able to do it without medication, I'll do that also. So as of right now, I do things that are non-medicinal. I take daily walks, which are good for your mental health anyway, which is good anyway for your life. So daily walks, I make sure to get sunshine. I journal. Oh, journaling was very, very helpful for me because it's like just like a, you know how like things come in? The journaling is like you're just taking all this stuff out. So whatever the thoughts were, I was journaling in the journal. I even wrote at one point, and I'll find that I was like, I will not hurt myself. Like I made a promise to myself that I'll go on the journal and look at it. So journaling helps. Exercise helps. Finally, I started going back to the gym. That helps. So just a healthy lifestyle, you know, like eliminating sugary stuff as much as possible. My drink of choice is green tea and honey. And it's so good. But yeah, lots of hydration, healthy living helps anyway. Getting enough sleep, that stuff helps. So I was able, like I said, so I've been off of the Zoloft for about 6 months, over 6 months now actually. And I was supposed to be on it for a year. My 1 year checkup with my OBGYN is coming up. But yeah, that's when I was supposed to talk to him about weaning off of it. But I actually got off of it after 6 months, and people are on it for years. People are on it without having been through postpartum. People on antidepressants, people on medicine, people get off of it, go back on it. I will not knock it if it's needed. And being that I'm from a culture where I'm Sierra Leonean, West African, so it's not so culturally it's not something we really talk about like that. Like it can be stigmatizing to say you have depression. You were depressed. What do you have to be depressed about? You live in America. What do you have to be depressed about? You have a job. What do you have to be depressed about? Man, we're African. We don't get depressed. We don't deal with depression. We just pray about it. Man, we're Christian. We don't deal with that. We just pray about it. And we pray about it. And if we need tools, we use it. Whether it's therapy, whether it's medicinal, whatever tools. Because here's the thing. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to be around for my children. So there's that. That's it. That's it. Whatever I need to do to take care of me. If I had high blood pressure, I would take my blood pressure medicine. I go to the gym. I do my cardio to be around healthy for my children. If I am feeling anxious or depressed or going through a mental brain illness situation, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to be around for my loved ones and utilize all these tools that God has given doctors, people who create medicine, and that's what that's gonna be. So that was my little story time about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, depression, anxiety. It is okay to not be okay. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah, and it's okay to talk about it too. It is what it is. I'm a better person because of it. Sure. Like I be trying to people please and I'm like, get it together, Hannah. We don't do that no more. And just trying to be our best selves with this one life that God gave us, you know? Do the best with it. Thank God for his faithfulness. Thank God for his love. I cut my hair and I like it. I look chic. Makes me look, damn. I got a haircut and I like it. I love it. I don't care. So that was my story about my mental health journey. And if you are going through it, if you know somebody who's going through it, it will be okay. I promise you, it will be okay. Hang in there. There's hope. It will be okay. Okay? It will be okay.